Welcome to the Family Office, planning for the people who matter most.
So we've beaten this topic like a dead horse, but a new wrinkle has arisen in the Iran war. And now we've got Saudi Arabia that's starting to get a stronger, a stronger presence in the whole conflict. Have you taken a look at it, Chris? And if so, tell me what you're thinking about Saudi's position and how do you think all of that's going to shake out?
Well, I'm excited about that. And I'm excited in that I'm finally glad that someone is stepping up in some way to take I don't want to say a leadership position, but a position where they're going to go, all right, cool, dude. Like if you can get more and more countries in that coalition land, and you've heard me talk about this for a very long time. I believe I think that this is exactly what Trump wanted to have happen, which is create a coalition and create an allegiance down there for a number of reasons. I just don't think he thought it was going to take this long. And I don't think he thought it was going to, I don't think he thought they weren't going to bargain with him because let's be honest and let's be very fair here. A lot of people negotiate with him and agree and have deals with him and do deals with him. I mean, there's a lot of deals that the United States has done that are really good for the United States. And there are some that have not been very good for the United States, but no one's really talking about those. Those are like the real things that are happening because we're so stuck on certain things. Like, for example, this, which is a big deal, but I think it's a good thing. And I think that the more they get involved, the more it's going to sweat that area, or meaning those folks that are committing instability in that area. It's going to sweat them out. And the less the United States will have to do the heavy lifting. And the less we have to do, the better. Look, Saudi Arabia is a major player there. They haven't agreed yet, right? Have they? They haven't agreed yet to those terms, or has Israel agreed to those terms? We were talking about them last time, right? That's still in negotiation.
No,
but
Saudi does not recognize Israel as
right, and they have to. But they said they have to. But they you mentioned it. But Israel has to give a slice of land away or something like that.
That is correct.
And acknowledge Palestine. I think it's like I said. I think it's the step in the next direction. It's going to be a domino effect because once other neighboring countries in that area see the economic returns and they see the prosperity that comes as a result of Saudi Arabia doing whatever it is that they're going to do with the United States to stabilize that region, they're all going to want in on it. They're all going to want in on it.
Okay.
No one wants to deal with that bad actor anymore. It's like I said, Len, no one wants to deal with a crazy person. No one does.
I don't look at it exactly the same way you do, but I understand why you're saying what you're saying. Because again, when you earlier, you talked about power versus virtue, and it all comes down to perspectives. As it relates to Saudi Arabia, the way I look at it, I took a couple of notes. I think they have three major desired outcomes for getting involved. One is I think they want to prevent, panic level oil prices, because you would think on the one hand, well, if oil prices went up, they would get more benefits and they would get more profit and all of those. But there's a diminishing return. So if gas ever got up to $200 a barrel, now they've got people who are going to look at other alternative forms of energy, like electric vehicles and, finding other ways for mass public transportation and things like that. And so there's a very fine balance. So they have an economic vested interest to be involved in this conflict / war. Second thing is, I think they want to become the region's security leader. And so instead of Iran being that region's security leader, they want to, because if they have an ally in the United States who can provide that military, where they can buy, armed goods for them, because Saudi Arabia is super, super rich. So they can buy as many weapons and as many arms as they possibly can, as long as they're friends with the United States. So they could become that military leader in that area. And then third is to create consequences for Iranian proxies. So the Saudis have an issue with the Houthis because you have another choke point, which is over by the Red Sea. And if that becomes a choke point that the Houthis stop, then that stops the oil flow to their coffers. See, right now with the Strait of Hormuz, that's not impacting Saudi Arabia's oil flow, but the Red Sea, that's a really big one. And so they want to make sure that they can control that as well. And so Saudi, like, let's make no mistake about it. They understand their strategic, their strategic approach to this entire conflict. And unless it's in their best interest to align with the United States, they wouldn't align with the United States, but it just so happens that it is in their strategic best interest. So it works out for both of us because they're a big player in the oil space. The United States is a big player in the oil space, and the United States and the Saudis have a common enemy in Iran. So for all of those reasons, it just makes sense for the United States to be in alignment with what Saudi Arabia is trying to do.
Well, I think it makes sense to anybody who's thinking long term. And I think a lot of those countries in that area, especially the Saudis, have to think long term. We're within 100 years away from being away from oil. I mean, that's the reality. I mean, we're within maybe 50 years.
Could be.
Maybe 25 years. I mean, the only thing that's slowing us down is infrastructure. And once we get that turned over and we let real capitalists and real entrepreneurs flourish, like guys like Elon Musk that just go out there and buy power companies to skip having to hook up to a grid, screw hooking up to the government's controlled grid, to the public grid. I'm just going to buy a company and create my own grid. And that's exactly what these guys are going to do, because when we do leave the oil economy and we get more nuclear and more fission and all those advanced energies that are going to just absolutely, I mean, think about it. Those types of energies and alternative energy with AI working on these problems and solving these problems, you don't think we're going to find a way to create coal fusion reactors like this? I mean, it's going to happen. As soon as that happens, oil's dead. Like it's dead. So of course, you don't think that these Middle Eastern countries, especially the Saudis, who only have one trick, which is what? Oil, aren't going to look at this and go, wait a minute. Europe regulated themselves to death. I mean, do you know what the GDP difference is between the whole United States and all the Eurozone countries? It's like 27 or some odd countries. Do you know what the GDP difference is? It's 10 plus trillion.
Wow.
The United States has a 10 plus trillion GDP advantage over
all of them together?
All Eurozone countries combined. Wow,
that's a lot.
Len, do you know that we were exactly dead even in 2008?
I did
The
not.
Eurozone versus the United States, GDP to GDP. And by 2030, it's expected to be an $18 trillion gap advantage in the United States' favor by 2030.
Wow.
So you don't think for a second that those countries in the Saudi Arabia and all that are going, wait a minute, America innovates, Europe regulates, and Asia copies. So you don't think for a second that they're going to look at that and go, we have a chance here to create a new coalition with new trade agreements, with new all of this, all of these things, with the United States is at our back, the way the Europeans did, except this time we're not greedy like the Europeans are. We don't force the United States to be our police and force them to be our pocketbook. Game over. Like I said, game over for Europe. And you're going to see these powers. And I think those Middle Eastern countries see it, and Donald Trump sees it. And of course, the United States sees it by default, because the United States sees this crap coming by default, Len, because it's capitalist. And no matter what you want to say, the capitalist system prevails over every other system so far that humans have come up with. So,
well, I've got a wrinkle for you. So let's talk about
like Rip
China.
Van Winkle, Rip Van Winkle.
A wrinkle for you in a big way.
In a big way. Let's hear it.
Here's China on the scene. And I want to get your take before I give my 2 cents about what China is doing to position itself, because right now it's already the second world dominating economy and all of those things. And they're trying to compete against the United States for the first. Now, of course, they're not anywhere close yet, but they are definitely gaining steam as it relates to, if you look at the United States growth and you look at China's growth, it's not even close. China's growing much, much faster than the United States. So if they continue at this pace in the next 20 to 30 years, if something doesn't drastically change the trajectory like AI, China could overtake the United States. And one of the ways they're doing it is, I don't know if you know or not, did you know last month they bought more gold than they've ever bought in the history of the world? And so when you look at what they're doing, I wanted to get your take on, what do you think if you were Xi Jinping, and you were trying to become the world's most dominant superpower, or at least have an equal footing at the table, what do you think it is that they're doing to get that level of footing with the United States?
Well, I mean, everybody wants to say how young the United States is, and it's 250 years old, so it's a baby as a country, but that gives it its advantage. China's old. So the older the country is, the harder it is to flip. And what I mean by that, and this is exactly why it's so hard for Iran to flip.
Okay.
Because there's too much ideology. You know what I'm talking about. Ideology, thanks. There's too much ideology in those areas of the world. There's too much, there's just too much holding on to a certain way, a certain virtue. This is the way we did it. And that's why the English language is so dominant. The English language is so dominant because the English language has evolved more than any other language. The English language is so fluid and has so many different means to a different word. Like a word means so many different things because it has evolved so much. Other languages haven't evolved, right? That's why English doesn't have different words, right? For like in most languages, there's a female version of the word and a male. It's not like that because that language has evolved to where we are in the world today. So China would be very difficult. It would be very difficult for me because on one hand, I see progressive success and forward thinking, and then, which is capitalism. And then on this other side, I have ideology and communism and all of that crap I have to hold on to. And I have to pray to the old gods and pray to the new gods and then this and do. So that was one of the biggest issues on why you have so much stall in those types of areas, because eventually they're going to hit a stall. They're going to hit a point and they're going to go and they're going to reset and crumble again because those systems force them to do so. Now, what's changed for China is that they've tinkered with it a little bit. It's not totally communism. They're embracing some capitalistic state control capitalism and things like that. But again, that's a mutation. And we all know that when we meddle in the system, that's when the system breaks. If I was in that situation, it would be no ideology, straight capitalism. Let's go. Put all the coal in the furnaces, unregulate everything. Let's freaking go. Let's just make sure we don't poison our people to death, and let's build out. Let's put the full force of everything behind this. But here's the problem. You're in a controlled state, and this relies on people being content. And the more you take from them and the more you make it harder and the more you surveil them and the more you do this and the more you do that, the more malcontent you get. So until you don't need the mob or the people, there's the only way to become successful and to beat the United States is to make your people happier. And you saw this, Len, especially now post World Cup. I don't know if you've seen this, all these people that are like, I don't want to go home and I don't want to go back and I want to come back to the US and la 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 la. Because these people realized, they went, wow, the rest of the world is a freaking sham compared to the United States. So until you can make your people happier than the masses of the United States, kiss it goodbye. It'll never happen. Never, ever happen, because you just watch what happens. Because as soon as the United States gets its together, which is about to, the back nine of Trump's second term, or the second, you know what I'm talking about? The back nine of his current term.
The lame duck term. Yeah.
The last 2 years of his term, watch out. You're going to see double-digit U.S. GDP growth. Okay. You're going to see it.
Now, here's a couple of things that you got to see about what China's doing, man. They have I don't know if you know this or not. Do you know how many years they created for their plan to become the superpower? Do you know what their number of years was?
What is it?
100 years. They had a 100-year plan. And their goal is to be the number one superpower by 2045. And right now, China.
But who though? Who is they though? It's a small group of people in a room.
Okay, but what I'm saying though is that China and it in its entire game plan, just hear me out, Chris, because what you and I are going to do, let's do this before 2030. Let's plan a trip to China. Let's go to Beijing, Shanghai, Chengdu, Hong Kong. We'll do a whole area trip, man. And I just want to have a pre, during, and post conversation about China and what they're doing. Because here's a couple of things that I want you to see. One is one of their strategies is they want to become a gold price maker. And so what they're doing is they're investing less in US bonds and they're investing more in gold, and they've been repurchasing gold and they've been stockpiling gold and they've been creating these gigantic holding places for gold. Why is that? Because right now gold backed derivatives and paper gold, if everybody went and they decided to go and take that paper and get a representative amount of gold, there's physically not enough gold on the planet. So what they're doing is they're putting these restrictions on the amount of paper gold they can buy, and they're saying, hey, we're artificially increasing the paper gold price to incentivize you to buy physical gold. And so that's why they're stacking up their vaults. So because what they want to do is the second thing they want to do is they want to reduce their vulnerability to US sanctions. And so because, like the whole thing that happened with the Swiss system in Russia and all of that, and the sanctions that the United States puts on different people who disagree with them, China wants to have no part of that. They don't want to have any interest of being subjugated by another country. And so the amount of gold they're stockpiling could play a role in that. And so the third thing they want to do within that plan is they want to connect the price of gold to the yuan. So they're not looking to dominate the world. But what they're looking to do is in continents like Africa and continents like South America that are being developed with their roads and belt initiatives. They're going into those countries and they're building up the infrastructure so they can come in and start to harvest some of the natural resources from those different places. And so they're doing, instead of doing it with military might, they're doing it with diplomacy. And so that doesn't make it less, it's actually more insidious because, people, they're coming in and they don't realize the damage that it's doing because of the benefits that it's creating as well. Because if I'm a place where if I have to drive from one place to another, that typically takes me 7 to 10 hours. But if I had a road, it'd take me 2 to 3 hours. 10 out of 10 times, I'm going to accept the latter, which is to pave the roads. And so China's saying, hey, we'll pave the roads. So that's another part. And so finally, what they want to do is to have this alternative global system. So if you have stockpiles of gold, because right now, London and New York control essentially the gold prices. They kind of set the gold prices. So if China has enough of that gold, they can then compete to say, no, actually, this is what we suggest the gold price is. And now they can have something to correlate that data as opposed to just paper gold in and of itself. So by taking all of those steps little by little over time, getting an opportunity to continue to build up their military. So when the time's right to go back and re-seize Taiwan, other than that, they're not using their military might to do anything. But economically, if you can have an influence, other countries in the region will listen because now they're having a say. Because why? Last point that I'll make. If you go anywhere in the world, essentially China has become the world's leading manufacturer. So we've talked about that part before. So we don't need to relitigate where you think it's going with individual manufacturing. It's the totality of that strategy that puts them in a position where if they do it right and they execute well, it won't just be one world dominant power since Bretton Woods. They will be the second dominant power. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that in times before where you have a dominant empire take over, the other one has to go away and cease to exist. I don't believe it'll happen that way, and I don't think it'll be through a war. I don't think it'll be kinetically decided. I think it'll be economically and strategically decided, and they're pulling off the plan pretty well.
Look, I don't disagree with with what you're saying as far as this could potentially get them there. I don't ever disagree with that. But what I do disagree with is that no matter what plan they put into their base operating system, their base ideology, it'll never work because their base way of existing doesn't allow for those types of plans to flourish fully. Because again, no matter what you do, it's never going to work until you embrace a capitalistic system or a public-based capitalistic system. You got to have the ingredients, and the United States has those ingredients. They do. It's exactly the reason why the United States is so unique compared to every other country, because the United States does things differently than the rest of the world. That's what makes the United States the United States. So I think China has everything it could do, all the possibilities. But when you're coming from the position that they're coming from, the end game, it will never work. It'll always crumble and fail because it's not based off of a capitalist system the way the United States is based off of the 3 branches of government and checks and balances. You can't have the same person in power for that long.
This guy's been indexing though, bro.
No way.
Roman Empire lasted 4,000 years on an agrarian based
come on.
Economic system.
Exactly. And
250 years we've been around.
No, you can. And a lot of people say, "Oh my God, it's the Chinese."
The Chinese Empire lasted thousands of years. The Ming Dynasty, bro.
I get
it. You can't use 250 years and use that as the linchpin. Now you can't do that.
I'm saying that.
I happen to agree with you that capitalism is the best system. The only reason why I push back is to suggest that what China is trying to do won't work. It will absolutely work if they execute properly. There's no way you can tell because they do embrace aspects of capitalism.
But that's
one of the reasons why they've grown over the last 50 years faster than any nation in history. I'm not arguing for China. I'm just laying out facts.
First of all, who the hell can believe those numbers? So number one, I'm skeptic of any number they put out there. Okay. With that. But
your eyes, bro, that's why we need to go.
But in number two, here's the second thing. Here's the second thing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what their plan is because no matter how much they try, it's still going to fail because it's not a capitalist country. It's not. It's a communist country, and it's not capitalism, Len. It's Frankenstein capitalism. It's capitalism where they take and choose what they want. There's never going to be a way where they're going to ever out excel that. And the point you made where like, well, they've been around for thousands of years. My point exactly. Thousands of years. And they've only been in the modern era for what? 60 years? 50 years?
Which is that's the reason why it's even that more impressive. They've lifted 1 billion people out of poverty.
How so?
How I just said it. They were impoverished in a significant way. And in the last 50 to 70 years, they've lifted more people out of poverty than any other country in history.
Says who?
Bro,
can I go find suburban neighborhoods?
Yes. Yes, you can.
Suburban neighborhoods, grocery stores, Walmarts, Costco's, their versions of it. Like I can go.
Yes.
I don't believe
Absolutely,
it.
You can.
I don't believe it.
That's why we got to take a trip, bro.
I don't believe it. I
Oh
don't
my God.
believe
Just do some
it is.
research, Chris. It's so
I'll do it.
clear,
I'll
bro.
do the
Like there's so
research.
much technology that's there.
If
Again,
that's
I'm not
the case-
suggesting they have their problems. They have
If
an
that's the
aging
case-
population. They have real estate challenges and things like that. But as it relates to manufacturing, as it relates to goods and services, as it relates to technological advances, they have some of the best EVs in the world. The United States does not open their markets to Chinese EVs. Why? Because they will mock the United States. I'm telling you, Chris,
Len,
go do your research.
But Len, it's the same reason. Well, Len, you're arguing my point now. It's the same exact reason why all these countries don't want the United States to go sell in their markets, because they knew if the United States sold in their markets, they'd be killed too. It's the reason why why you can't buy American beef in Australia. You'd kill the
United States goods. The reason why other countries can compete is because the American worker gets paid better, and because of that, the goods and services cost more.
Exactly. So how is it then that you can lift 1 billion people out of poverty and not pay them?
Okay, they have a thriving economy. There are people there.
But wait, what people? That's my point, Len. How do you lift 1 billion people out of poverty by paying them slave wages? How then? How does
not how it is?
But how does it? But wait a minute. Hold on. Did they figure out some way to magically make a yuan spend 4 different ways than a dollar?
They artificially devalued the yuan.
Got it. So then how can you even compete with me then? That's like trans sports now.
Okay.
That's like making a man athlete compete with a woman athlete now.
That's a valid argument. That's a valid argument, but you make it seem like you have the ruling class that's living
it's communism.
Palaces,
that's communism though.
And
but that's communism.
Everybody else that's living in abject squalor. And
but Len, that's
just
communism.
Not true, bro.
But
that's just not true.
Well, then how do you lift 1 billion people out of poverty and not pay them U.S. wages then? Because look, Len, a lot of people here, Len, $106,000 a year is poverty in Orange County, California now.
Because it cost $2 million to buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house.
But it doesn't cost that in China?
No. Okay, think about this.
So wait a minute.
So imagine. Here's my question, Chris. And here's my question. Okay. When my son went to Beijing and Shanghai, he would buy a meal for like $4 to $5. So if you can get things at 1/3 to 1/4 of the cost, you only need to make 1/3 to 1/4 of the amount, because it's all relative. So if I go to for example, my son makes, I don't know if he'd be comfortable with me sharing. Let's just say he makes north of 6 figures in his job. Okay. You take that same wage and you put it in, let's say, Nebraska. He could go and buy a sprawling mansion, but because he lives in New York, he can barely, he has to have roommates for his apartment. So it's all relative. Cost of living, the cost of food out there is a lot more expensive. So going back to Beijing and the whole China thing is that if the cost of goods and services are dirt cheap, if the cost of your gas and your energy is dirt cheap, and if the state, and I'm not arguing for communism, so please don't take that. But if the state is taking care of your educational costs, they're taking care of your medical cost, then the cost of living is significantly lower. So if you try to compare the United States wages to Chinese wages, you're literally mixing apples and oranges, because there are different economic forces at play. So again, I'm not arguing that the Chinese system is better. I'm not arguing that communism is better. What I'm saying is that there's aspects of their system that's working. And because it's working well, Chris, they are gaining pace with us. There are factors where they deal with the World Bank when they're purchasing gold and they're purchasing U.S. treasuries. They have to use the dollar to transact. So there are ways to measure their amount of spending. That's why we know that China has the second largest GDP because there's different indicators because they participate. They buy oil, they buy different minerals, things like that. They buy dollars, they buy bonds. They have to, and so we know with these verifiable factors that they are a dominant economy to be reckoned with, and to suggest that they're not, that really underplays who they are on the world stage.
I don't suggest that they're not by any means. What I'm just simply disagreeing with is that they can't ever get to that point that everyone says they're going to get to because they're innately flawed by their system. And I don't understand why people don't put more weight on that. And here's my last point to it. If it's so great, look, rats go when the ship's burning, and rats know where to go. Ants go where the sweet stuff is. Human beings know too. And last I checked, there's no influx of immigration into China at all from anywhere.
There are people,
not the developed world and the undeveloped world,
moving to China. I can tell you.
When you now, compare we're not
comparing the United States to China. I'm not saying that at all.
Wait a minute, hold on.
But there are people moving into China as we speak.
I'm not doubting that. There's people moving into California right now as we speak, which is an insane decision to make. I mean, come on. There are people moving to Mexico. I mean,
absolutely.
So there are people that move to Calcutta. But the reality is this: if you look at immigration statistics, people are going to go where it's the best, and people aren't going and lining up saying, "I can't wait to get to China." People are lining up going, "I can't wait to get to America." Why? Because everybody knows you may make $1 billion. Look, you could be a billionaire. I don't know who Elon Musk's equivalent is in China. Let's just say Jack Ma, because that's the one that they floated around.
Be. Sure.
Okay, bro, he can't say nothing as a billionaire there. Otherwise, he gets silenced for months.
No doubt. I agree with that.
So why would you want to go be a billionaire? So here, that in itself.
Those are two different questions, though, Chris.
But that's the foundational principle, Len, behind it all. Because if you stifle the ability for people to be able to go from zero to Elon Musk, where you can do that in the United States and have an opinion and not get your head cut off or whatever, you by nature, Len, you're going to get more Elon Musks out of this system than you will ever get out of China's system. Because
I'm not arguing that. That's a different question.
So
here's the flip side of it, Chris. Go ahead.
Because again, going back, unless you can figure out how to get rid of people and making them happy, you got to appease the masses. And until you can get rid of the masses, I'm sorry, China's not going to be the power that they want to or think they're going to be. And if they do get to that point,
they're already becoming that, though, Chris. That's the point that you're not acknowledging.
They may be on track for that, Len. They may be in that right direction.
Let me ask you this. Will you at least acknowledge that China is doing the right things to position itself to become one of the world powers? Can you at least acknowledge that?
I think that if they were doing those things in an upstanding way, then I would say yes. But again, they're doing it on the backs of cheap labor, manipulated, state-run, influxed markets, more so and worse than what we've done. Like, what they do to prop up their economy is thousands of times worse than what we did with TARP and the banks and the .coms and the airline pensions and all that crap that we've done in America. It makes that look like a petting zoo. It does. Whenever you have state-supported and state-run pickers, look, all we have to do, Len, is look at Solyndra. The government poured billions of dollars into Solyndra during the Obama administration. It's the next great, and the company's gone. It's bankrupt. Why? Because you can't do that in private business. So as they are on their way to seemingly getting to that success, Len, it's going to get tripped up.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing I think you're missing, though, because I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that China is going to all of a sudden take over and be the world's dominant power.
No,
so
I get that.
Instead of it being unipolar power, I think it's going to be multipolar power. And I think en route to multipolar power is going to be bipolar power. And so I think China is going to have a massive influence over India and Brazil and, the other BRICS nations, because they have growing economies. Their population, if you take the whole BRICS economy and you compare it to the world's population, the economy is like this, lower than the rest of the world, but population, it's close. And if China gains a stronghold and begins to do business with them, and the yuan can become a currency of exchange to a smaller group of countries that's growing in their GDP, that's growing in their population, that's also growing as it relates to a young population. So you couple that, they allow their AI systems to be open source and used by those other countries, then those countries start rapidly growing. I'm telling you, Chris, don't underestimate what they can do.
I'm not underestimating, because here's the long game. If you do underestimate them, if you underestimate them, they will seize power violently. And then again, those people who are doing business with them will have to bend the knee and be subjugated to them and their virtue. Okay? It's the same exact thing with the United States. You are not going to want to do business with them long term. It's the reason why, look, at one point you say, the Roman Empire can never fall, right? The Roman Empire fell because it got too big. The Roman Empire couldn't govern itself anymore.
That is correct.
There wasn't one central, and it wasn't a republic anymore, Len. Remember, they overthrew the republic in there. It became a monarchy again. And then by its nature, the Roman Empire didn't fail as a republic. The Roman Empire failed as a monarchy.
And
under
how
Caesars.
do you not see that the United States is headed towards the same path potentially?
Here's where I'll sign off.
You cannot say that it's not.
Here's the day that the populace cannot bear arms is the day the United States is dead and is on decline. The day the populace cannot bear arms and assemble freely, and you can't go and fail 1,000 times and be successful, you're dead in the water. The United States is over. It's game over. Anyone can take us at that point. But until that happens, it's game over, baby.
Hey, it's been a great conversation, man. I know we had a couple of other topics on the table, but sometimes other topics deserve the amount of time to go in depth, because in this paper, chasing, clickbaiting, topical story having news cycle, sometimes you need to go a little deeper and just engage in some lively debate without having to take a commercial break. So I always enjoy these conversations with you, Chris.
Likewise. See you next time.
All right. Till next time.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.